all the positive cases, even though they're only 6% of the population. 14 New Yorkers passed away. They are in our thoughts and prayers. 618 hospitalized. That's down. 138 were in ICU. That's down. 67 COVID patients were intubated. That's down. Capital District is 0.8. Great. Central New York, 0.8. Great. Finger Lakes, 0.6. Great. Long Island, 0.9. That's good news. That's down from where it was. New York City, 1.4. Not good. Mid-Hudson, 1.4. Not good. Mid-Hudson has in it Orange, Rockland. Mohawk Valley, 0.4. That's good. North Country, 0.3. That's great. Southern Tier, 1.1. That has that Broome hotspot that we're working on. Western New York, 1.1. That's good compared to where they were. All of these numbers, please, with a grain of salt. This is weekend reporting. We understand that weekend reporting can be a little off within the margin of error. And also on these numbers, remember, we're now basically running two types of testing surveys. Oversampling in the hotspot zip codes, and then the balance of state. The problem is still those hotspot zip codes. Also, this was a Jewish holiday this weekend, so we don't know how that affects the numbers, how many people were available for tests, how many people were going to hospitals, etc. on a religious weekend. Step back, the overall formula that New York has taken on dealing with COVID that has proven highly successful. Present the facts to the people of the state. Present the information to the people of the state. Trust the people of the state that if they have the information and they believe the information, they will act intelligently in response to the information. I said that on day one of this situation, which was 218 days ago. I believe it in my heart, and it has been vindicated. It's worked. Present the facts, step one. Step two, take appropriate action, government competence, government effectiveness. Government has a vital role to play, and it has to be effective in that role. It's a organizational role, an operational role. You have to get the tests done. We're doing more than any other state. By the way, look at how many tests we're doing, and look at how many tests some of the states are doing, especially down south, Midwest, where they have purposely reduced the number of tests on the theory that if you don't test, you don't get positive cases, and if you don't get positive cases, the problem doesn't exist, right? Which is obviously a bizarre theory. But we do in one day what some larger states do in a week now in number of tests. And their test numbers actually dropped. Our test number has been increasing. But present the facts and then take action. We said coming into the fall there were going to be challenges. Colleges open, weather gets colder, people go inside more, schools open. We anticipated all of that. Economic activity is increased, flu season. So the fall we were aware of as presenting challenges. We then had hotspot clusters. Nothing new. We had the first hotspot cluster in the United States because we were the first case for all of this in the United States. So we had everything first. First hotspot cluster, first super spreader, that was New Rochelle, Westchester. We were the first in the laboratory, right? Because COVID came here first from Europe when everybody was still saying the China virus. But we know how to deal with a hotspot. But you have to deal with a hotspot. It's not enough to know it. It's not enough to talk about it. You then have to manage it. And the management has to be affirmative and has to be deliberative. What do? We do everything we can do. Inform the people, which is always my first and the most hopeful option. Inform the people, and the people will act accordingly. We've done that on the hotspot zip codes. Step 2, inform the local governments. Encourage them. If they don't do it, express to the local governments the seriousness and the consequences. I've done that on the hotspot zip codes with the local governments multiple times. I said that they have a legal obligation to enforce the law. If they're not enforcing the law, the local governments are violating the law. I said that, and we did that. The only option then available is what we did with bars and restaurants. Remember, bars and restaurants were the exact parallel for this situation. We knew we had a problem in bars and restaurants. I made that point repeatedly to the people. Most of the people in the state responded. Some didn't. We had continued problems in bars and restaurants. I told the local governments they were supposed to be doing it. Some did, some didn't. I made that point several times. Then, step 3, I said the state will step in, and the state will do enforcement itself. And we did that with bars and restaurants. We did tens of thousands of visits with a special task force. Compliance went way up because compliance works, enforcement works. Why don't people speed? Because you may get a ticket. If you know you're not going to get a ticket, more people will speed. That's a fact. Enforcement works. Enforcement worked with bars and restaurants. The state is going to start direct enforcement in these hotspot zip codes. We have started yesterday. We're going to be increasing the state's enforcement itself starting tomorrow. Local businesses that are in violation of the law will be fined and can be closed, just like the bars and restaurants. If there are businesses that are violating the gathering rules, they can be fined and they will be closed. You know the state is serious because they can look back at what we did with bars and restaurants. They were fined and they were closed when they're in violation. And it was highly effective. It's not a situation we like to be in. We didn't want to be in this situation in bars and restaurants where we had to have the state step in to do enforcement. But the bars and restaurants weren't doing it. The local government wasn't doing it. So life is options, and we didn't have any. And that's where we are with these hotspot zip codes. But I want local governments, I want the people in those hotspot zip codes to hear me. We've been talking about this for weeks. I've been urging the local governments to step up. And now I'm telling you the state is going to come in and do enforcement. And when the state does enforcement, we do enforcement. The state is a competent, effective administration. And look at the bars and restaurants. We're going to do the same here. So I just want the local governments and the local business owners and the people in those hotspot zip codes to understand. We started, and we're going to be increasing during the week. and our task force on enforcement has been highly effective on bars and restaurants, and I believe they're going to be highly effective in these hotspot zip codes. We have a state dashboard that monitors the testing in schools. Schools are important because schools can be a transmission point, not just because they're congregate gatherings, but they're places where different populations in different communities mix. Going back to the New Rochelle hotspot, again, first one in the United States, super spreader. The schools are where communities interconnect, because my child goes to a private school, but my child's on the hockey team with students from the public school. My child goes to private school, but my child goes to the playground and then plays with children who go to public school. That's where you get the virus shifting from populations and communities. And then the public school children go home to different families and can bring that virus home to different families. So testing in schools is always important because they're congregate settings. It's even more important in these hotspot zip codes because they can be places of transmission. And they can be places of transmission from community to community. The dashboard from the state is a source of information for parents and teachers and for the press. It goes back to my first point. Get the information out. Get the information out. We have an executive order that says school districts must report on a daily basis. If you go to that dashboard, you will see two sources of reporting. The state's reporting data from the laboratories themselves. Every test goes back to a lab. Every lab goes back to the state, DOH. And you'll see the reporting from all the labs, which is the fundamental catch-all, because every test done by a school, done by a nursing home, it all goes back to a lab. And those labs have to report. That is on the dashboard. There's a separate order that says each district must report. And if you look at the districts and you look at the districts in the hotspot zip codes, you'll see very few tests. So I'm saying to the local school districts in those hotspot zip codes, you need to do more tests more quickly in those schools, in those hotspot zip codes, because they can be a transmission point. If the local governments have any issue with doing more tests in those schools, contact the state and we will help you. We can even do it for you. DOH will send in testing people with rapid tests. I believe the local school districts, local governments can do it, but if they can't, we will do it for them. But we want additional tests right away, starting tomorrow, in those schools. Report the data on the dashboard, and let's find out what's going on. Because it is, the schools in this case will be the canary in the coal mine. And we want to see what's going on. And again, if you go to the dashboard today, you'll see very few results from those schools, which to me signals a problem. We knew these areas were hotspot zip codes. The first priority should be ramp up the testing in those schools so we understand what's happening. Last point is the president is still recovering from COVID. We wish him well. We sent him a New York basket of all sorts of goodies. I hope he had a chance to sample them. We've expressed our best wishes. I think this is a point that everybody sits back a little bit and takes a deep breath and says, you know what, with all this political energy and all these political dynamics, we're all Americans, we're all people, we all have families. COVID is frightening. It creates anxiety. It's an unknown. And our best wishes are with everyone. And this is not about politics, and it's not about partisanship, and it's not about who you agree with or disagree with. We're human beings. We're citizens of the same country. And we are all interconnected. That is how we live in New York. And this is a moment to remember that. And in that spirit, we wish the President and the First Lady and his family well. I'm sure his children are nervous, and they should be. That's the nature of this disease. I think what happened with the President and the Rose Garden, it just brings this COVID pandemic to a point where it says to the whole nation, it is alive and it is well and it is strong, and it's no time for COVID fatigue because the COVID virus is strong. And one event you can see spread. And it's a fact. And you look at that Rose Garden situation, and you look at the growing list of people who are infected from that one outdoor gathering, right? We've always said outdoor gatherings are better than indoor gatherings. Yes, but just because it's outdoors doesn't mean it's fine. And that's what we see in the Rose Garden. It was all outdoors. And look at the number of people, assuming it was the Rose Garden and it wasn't some other venue. But it's a stark reminder of the reality and the danger. Yes, even if you're President of the United States, even if you have your own doctor, it can infect anyone. So everyone should be careful. Okay, let's take some questions.
As a reminder, to ask a question, you will need to press star 1 on your telephone. To withdraw your question, press the pound key. Please stand by while we compile the Q&A roster.
Okay, operator? Anyone?
Yes, we do have. First question is from the line of Jack Fink from NY1. Your line is now open.
My man, Jack Fink. Jump back Jack, we call him.
I think I'm going to go with Jack. Do you like that better?
I like Jack. I like Jack. You could be a Jack, too. You know, you look like a Jack. I think Jack more than Zach. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I want to ask you, Governor, are you disappointed, maybe that's not even the right word, with some of the flow of information that's been coming from the White House? It seems like the president's doctors gave kind of a very optimistic and rosy picture yesterday, but then we had reports that kind of contradicted that. I know from the beginning of this crisis, you've tried to keep the numbers in perspective, with being sobering and presenting them as facts. Do you feel as though the White House has misrepresented or not been forthcoming, and is that a cause of concern?
It is two levels. Was there purposeful miscommunication or purposeful communication of incorrect information? I don't know. Has there been confusion? Yes, and confusion is bad. You're talking about the President of the United States. You're talking about a very nervous population. We're already nervous about COVID and this great unknown and the uncertainty. And the confusion is not helpful. It increases the anxiety. And this is not just any government confusion during this time is really not helpful. People look to government in a way they haven't looked to government in a generation. Government is more relevant today than it has been in a generation. Normally, this is all politics and who cares at the end of the day. No. Now what government does matters. Government is a source of stability. Why have I worked so hard from day one to be accurate, not to change, not to confuse, not to say, oh, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I got bad information? No, people are relying on what they hear. They can deal with bad news, but they can't deal with changing facts. Even with our local governments in New York. That's why I've tried to avoid, well, this one said this mayor said this county executive said this, but the state said this. Who's right, the contradictions. That's all anxiety producing. So the confusion hasn't been helpful. Everybody wishes the president well. I'm sure everybody was glued to their TV. The doctors come out, a lot of white jackets. They appear to be an authoritative source, and that gets, there's another source of information from the White House, which is also authoritative. So I think it just increases the anxiety. And these are scary times to begin with. And when the president is sick, it's even more scary. And it hasn't been helpful. Why, how, who, 72 hours, I didn't mean 72 hours from today, I meant day, communication matters. And it has not been helpful. I don't know why it would be purposeful, but even if it was just a mistake, it hasn't been helpful. And then you watch the list growing. It's all frightening, let's be honest. Next question, operator. Oh, by the way.
We have our next question.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, operator. Go ahead.
Okay, sir. We have our next question from the line of Martin Braun from Bloomberg News. Your line is now open.
Hiya, Martin.
Hi,
Martin,
can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hold on 1 second? I just want to follow up on another point with Jack. Get the information out. Get the facts out. That's why with these schools in the hotspot zip codes, I'm getting calls from parents. I'm getting calls from teachers who are in those schools, in those hotspot zip codes. And they want to know what's going on. And they go to the dashboard and they don't see anything. Teachers are nervous. The teachers' union, by the way, should want information on their teachers. They should want to know what the testing data is in these schools. The parents want to know the testing data. I said all along to the parents, be involved in the plans, and they're just plans, and then the question is, how well is the plan implemented? We'll put it up on the web. You can look at it every day, just the way you did all during COVID, and you'll see your school, and you'll see the infection rate. They now go to their school. They don't see anything. And the lack of information creates anxiety. We want the tests done because, first of all, if we have a problem, I want to know that we have a problem sooner rather than later. And the schools are the canary in the coal mine. And the parents want to know, and the teachers want to know. And when they don't get information, or they see on the website the lab reports say this, but the school's not reporting anything, that increases the anxiety. Correct information, correct facts. If you don't know, say you don't know. That's not a great answer, but it's better than confusion. I'm sorry, Martin.
Oh, sure. You mentioned that the state is going to start direct enforcement in hotspot zip codes, and we know that many of those zip codes overlap in ultra-Orthodox Jewish communities. Are you going to be doing direct enforcement in synagogues, in yeshivas? Are you going to be asking private schools to do more tests? You mentioned school districts doing more tests, but many of these schools are not public schools. So if you can elaborate on exactly where the enforcement will be and the school aspect of it.
Good question. First, Beth, can you answer the question on a private school with the definition of school district?
Yes. So every private school is required to also report into the dashboard, and what the governor has outlined is requesting in hotspot zip codes additional testing, and so that would apply equally to private schools within that jurisdiction as well.
Okay. And then, Martin, I understand that many of these zip codes have ultra-Orthodox populations. I have spoken to the religious leaders. I've done a lot of work with the Orthodox community over the years. I have very long-standing relationships with the Orthodox community over the years. We worked through a lot of difficult issues. And, by the way, my relationship with them goes back to when I was in my 20s. So, and my father was governor, so I know them very well. And I've done a lot of work with them. They have been wholly cooperative and responsive here. But yes, we do enforcement across the board. A Catholic church, a mosque, a temple, all have the same state rules and guidelines, and they must all follow them. And shop owners, individuals, it doesn't matter if you're Jewish, Orthodox, ultra-conservative, Roman Catholic, atheists, same set of rules for everyone. The virus does not discriminate or select by religion.
And just on the enforcement itself, will the state be doing spot checks, or how does it work exactly?
The state does not have the resources to cover this larger geographic area by just a blanket approach. We did bars and restaurants, but remember, the bars and restaurants are a finite universe. We're putting together a task force, like we did with bars and restaurants, of employees from across the state government, and we will be doing targeted enforcement in each of these clusters. But it's the same thing we did with bars and restaurants, which was very effective. But it is going to be targeted enforcement. We're not doing public education. We're past that point. I urge the local governments to transition from public education to enforcement. I did the same thing with bars and restaurants. I don't believe there's anybody left in this state who doesn't know that there are mask requirements and social distancing requirements and gathering requirements. I don't believe it's an issue of public education. I believe it's a question of enforcement. And that's what we're going to do. Next question, operator.
We have our next question from the line of Jesse Byrne from New State. Your line is now open.
Good morning, Governor.
How are you?
Good. A state-run COVID testing site on Herkimer Street in Brooklyn is closing later this month. Is that a one-off closure or part of a larger reduction in the number of testing sites that the state is operating?
Mr. Gareth Rhodes, have you heard about the Herkimer Street testing site?
I have not, and I will look into that. We have no plans to close any testing sites, and if anything, we've been expanding where we're offering testing. Perhaps it's a transition from to a more of a rapid testing site, but our goal has been to expand testing, not decrease. I will look into that immediately.
Yeah, we're not closing any testing sites. So I don't know what site you're referring to. I don't know what's going on, but we're not closing sites. We're expanding. One more, operator.
Give me 1 second here, Gov. Next question is from the line of Marlo Ellis from WNYT News Channel 13. Your line is now open.
How are you?
Good, Governor. Can you hear me? This is Jill Knopka from News Channel 13.
I can hear you, Jill.
Excellent. Nice to speak with you.
Nice to speak with you.
Just wanted to ask, I just have a couple questions. I heard you cough right in the beginning. Are you okay? Should we be concerned? And then are there any updates on the nursing home numbers with the continued calls for additional reporting of numbers from different people around the state?
I am 100% okay. I take COVID tests periodically, and I am all good. I wear my mask. I am the number one provider of information and constant affirmation of social distancing, etc. So I'm all good there, and we don't have any new numbers that I know of. Nothing has changed, so there are no new numbers.
I hear people say that it's double what's on the website for the state in nursing home deaths. Is that accurate?
I hear people say there's life on Mars, and I hear people say that the whole world is involved in a conspiracy, and I hear people say a lot of things. But no, it's not accurate. Thank you very much, all. It's a beautiful day out there. See if you can enjoy it and enjoy it safely. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's conference call. Thank you all for participating. You may now disconnect.